The massive doors of Meridian 7 space station slid open with a soft hiss. Tae-il stepped through, carrying a single travel bag over his shoulder. His eyes widened as he took in the sight before him. The central hub stretched out like a small city, filled with beings he had only seen in videos and training materials. Tall, blue-skinned creatures with 4 arms walked past shorter, furry beings that chittered in high-pitched voices. A group of crystalline entities floated near the ceiling, their bodies catching and reflecting the artificial sunlight in rainbow patterns. This was his new home for the next 2 years. Tae-il was one of only 50 humans stationed on Meridian 7, part of Earth's cultural exchange program. Humanity had joined the galactic community just 20 years ago, and they were still the newcomers, still learning the rules. He made his way through the crowd, following the signs to the diplomatic quarters. Aliens of every shape and size moved around him. Some glanced at him with curiosity, others ignored him completely. Tae-il had studied 17 different species before coming here, but being surrounded by them was entirely different from reading about them in books near the center of the hub. Tae-il noticed a group of tall, armored figures standing in formation. They were Kelthians, he recognized immediately. Each stood nearly 7 feet tall, with bronze-colored skin that seemed to shimmer like metal. They wore elegant armor that looked both ceremonial and functional. Their faces were humanoid, but sharper, more angular, with eyes that gleamed like polished amber dot. One of the Kelthians turned as he passed. She was female. He could tell from the distinctive crest that ran from her forehead to the back of her skull. Her eyes locked onto him for a moment, studying him with an intensity that made him feel like a specimen under a microscope. Then she turned away, returning to her conversation with her companions. Tae-il continued walking, pushing the encounter from his mind. He had just reached the directory panel when the alarms began. The sound was deafening. Red lights flashed throughout the hub. The calm, orderly movement of the crowd instantly transformed into chaos. Aliens ran in every direction, some screaming in languages Tae-il couldn't understand. A mechanical voice boomed over the speakers. Containment breach in Lower Deck 7. Vex swarm detected. All personnel evacuate to upper levels immediately. This is not a drill. Tae-il's training kicked in. He pulled out his personal datapad and brought up the station schematic. Lower Deck 7 was directly below them. The crowd surged toward the elevators and emergency stairs leading upward. He could see the fear in everyone's eyes, regardless of their species. The Kelthian warriors he had seen earlier were moving against the crowd, heading toward the breach zone. They formed a defensive line near the entrance to the lower decks, weapons drawn. Tae-il moved closer, curious about what could cause such panic. He caught sight of the female Kelthian again. She was shouting orders to her team, her voice cutting through the chaos. Set up a perimeter here. We hold this line. Do not let anything through from below. What about the people still down there? One of her soldiers asked. They're already dead, she said flatly. Vex don't leave survivors. We contain here and prevent spread to the rest of the station. Tae-il pushed through the crowd until he reached the defensive line. A Kelthian soldier raised a hand to stop him. Civilian, evacuate immediately. What exactly are Vex? Tae-il asked. The female commander turned to him. Up close, she was even more imposing. You're human, she stated. You should know better than to be here. Vex are parasitic organisms. They feed on bioelectric energy or nervous system. One bite and you're paralyzed. A swarm can drain a person in minutes. Now leave. Tae-il pulled up information on his datapad, scanning quickly. They're insect-like? Hive behavior? Attracted to electromagnetic fields? Yes, the commander said impatiently. Which is why every living thing needs to get away from here. Go. Instead, Tae-il turned and walked toward the entrance to the lower decks. The Kelthian commander's hand shot out and grabbed his arm. Her grip was like steel. "Are you defective? I just told you that's death?" Tae-il looked at her calmly. "And I heard you. But there might be people alive down there. And if these things respond to electromagnetic fields, I might be able to disrupt them. You'll die," she said. "Maybe," Tae-il agreed. "But fear won't solve the problem, will it?" For a moment, the commander just stared at him. Her amber eyes showed complete confusion, as if he had just spoken in a language she couldn't comprehend. "Why do you show no fear, human?" Tae-il smiled slightly. "I didn't say I wasn't afraid. I said fear won't solve the problem." He pulled his arm free and continued toward the lower deck entrance. Behind him, he heard the commander speak to her soldiers. "Cover him. If he makes it back, retrieve him." The lower decks were dark. Emergency lighting cast everything in red shadows. Tae-il could hear a sound like rushing water mixed with clicking. The Vex swarm. He moved carefully, pulling tools from his utility belt. Every human diplomat was also trained as an engineer. It was part of Earth's philosophy that their representatives should be useful, not just political. He found what he was looking for, an electrical junction box. Using his multi-tool, he quickly rewired several circuits, overriding the safety protocols. His fingers moved fast but steady. The clicking sound was getting louder. They were close. Tae-il activated the junction box. Immediately, the electrical system in this section went haywire. Lights flickered on and off rapidly. Power surged through the walls. The electromagnetic pulse wasn't strong enough to damage equipment permanently, but it was enough to confuse organisms that navigated by electromagnetic fields. The clicking sounds changed pitch, becoming erratic. Tae-il ran back toward the exit, checking his datapad. The Vex swarm was breaking apart, individuals scattering in different directions instead of moving as one coordinated mass. He burst through the entrance to find the Kelthian commander and her soldiers waiting, weapons raised. They lowered them when they saw him. "Station security is moving in now," the commander said. "The swarm is scattered. They can handle individual Vex." She studied him carefully. "What did you do?" "Confuse them," Tae-il said, breathing hard. "They hunt by sensing electromagnetic fields. I created noise in the system, like shining a bright light in someone's eyes. That was." The commander paused, searching for words. "Incredibly stupid, but it worked," Tae-il pointed out. 3 people were still alive down there, one of the soldiers reported. "Security is extracting them now." The commander's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her eyes. She extended her hand to Tae-il in the human gesture of greeting. "I am Velanara, first blade of the Kelthian Empire's diplomatic guard." Tae-il shook her hand. "Tae-il, human diplomatic corps. Your species is either the bravest or the most foolish in the galaxy," Velanara said. "I must learn which." Over the following hours, as station security cleared out the remaining Vex, Velanara found herself watching the human. He had returned to helping with the cleanup, as if he hadn't just walked into certain death and walked back out. He joked with other humans, helped an elderly alien carry supplies, and showed no signs of the trauma that should have accompanied such an experience. It bothered her. In Kelthian culture, fear was respected. It kept warriors alive. It made them cautious and strategic. This human had felt fear. He'd admitted it, but had acted as if he hadn't. That shouldn't be possible. Fear triggered biological responses. It should have stopped him. As Tae-il passed by, Velanara called out to him. "Human, Tae-il, we should speak more. Your people are unusual." Tae-il smiled. "I've been told that before." "Sure, I'd like that. I'm still learning about everyone here. Valinara nodded slowly. She had been assigned by the Galactic Council to observe humanity and assess whether they were ready for full membership in the galactic community. After today, she had more questions than ever. This human had walked into death with his eyes open and somehow found a solution. What kind of species did that? What kind of evolution created beings that could feel fear but ignore it? And most importantly, what would happen when humanity faced something that couldn't be solved with clever engineering and stubborn courage? She needed to understand. The galaxy needed to understand. Because something told her that humans were going to change everything. 3 weeks had passed since the Vex incident. Valinara had made it her mission to study the humans on Meridian 7. She watched them in the cafeteria, observed them during their work shifts, and even attended one of their cultural presentation events. What she discovered only deepened her confusion. The humans were physically weak compared to most galactic species. They were slower than Kelthians, weaker than the Thorian traders, had duller senses than the Whisper folk. By every measurable standard, they should be a prey species. Yet they didn't act like prey. She found Tail in one of the station's observation decks. He was staring out at the stars, holding a cup of something hot that produced steam. He noticed her approach and smiled. Valinara, good to see you. Want some coffee? It's a human drink. I will try it, she said, more out of anthropological interest than desire. Tail poured her a cup from his thermal container. She sipped it carefully. The taste was bitter and sharp, with an underlying complexity. It's aggressive, she said. Yeah, that's coffee, Tail laughed. We love things that taste like they're trying to fight back. That casual statement struck Valinara as significant. You enjoy conflict? Not conflict exactly, Tail said, leaning against the observation window. We enjoy overcoming things. Challenges, obstacles. My friend Jiwoo, she's a xenobiologist. She handles organisms that could kill her with one sting. But she loves her work because it's difficult. As if summoned by her name, a cheerful human woman entered the observation deck. She had short black hair and carried a data tablet covered in stickers. Tae-il. There you are. And you must be Valinara. I've heard so much about you. Ji-Woo extended her hand enthusiastically. Valinara shook it, noting the human's firm grip despite her small size. You are the biologist. That's me. I study alien life forms. It's fascinating. Did you know that the Vex actually have a rudimentary collective intelligence? Each individual is basically mindless, but together they form something approaching sentience. It's beautiful, really. Beautiful? Valinara repeated. They nearly killed dozens of people. Well, yes, Jiwoo admitted, but that doesn't make them less interesting. Danger and beauty aren't opposites, you know. Another human approached. He was taller and more muscular than Tae-il, with scars visible on his arms. This was Hyeon-sik, one of the station's human security officers. Guy Woo, you're late for the thing, Hyeon-sik said. Oh, right. The climbing practice. Valinara, you should come watch. Valinara followed them to the station's recreational facility. There, she saw something that defied explanation. A wall had been constructed to simulate a rocky cliff face. Humans were climbing it without safety equipment beyond a thin rope and a harness. The wall extended 30 meters high. A fall could cause serious injury. Hyeon-sik chalked his hands and began climbing. Valinara watched as he methodically worked his way up, muscles straining. Halfway up, his foot slipped. He caught himself, hanging by his fingers alone. Instead of climbing down to safety, he continued upward. Why do you do this? Valinara asked Ji-Woo. For fun, Ji-Woo said simply. It's challenging. It makes us feel alive. You risk injury for enjoyment? Sure, it's not really dangerous if you know what you're doing. Well, not very dangerous. Ji Woo grinned. Want to try? Valinara did not want to try. The entire concept seemed irrational. But she was here to understand humans, so she agreed. The climbing was harder than it looked. Her Kelthian strength gave her an advantage, but the handholds were small, and the technique required precision. She made it halfway up before her arms began to tire. She had to admit there was something satisfying about reaching the top. See? Fun. Ji Woo said when Valinara descended. Over the following days, Valinara arranged a formal cultural exchange. The Kelthian warriors would demonstrate their combat techniques, and the humans would share theirs. It was approved by both diplomatic corps as a goodwill event. The demonstration took place in the station's largest training hall. 6 Kelthian warriors faced 6 humans. The rules were simple. Sparring matches, non-lethal weapons. First to yield loses. The first match was between Korval, one of Valinara's best warriors, and Hyansik. It was over in seconds. Korval was faster, stronger, and more experienced. Hyansik yielded quickly. The second match had the same result. And the third. The Kelthians won every match. It should have been satisfying, but Valinara noticed something strange. After each defeat, the humans gathered together, talking quickly and pointing at different techniques. They were analyzing, learning. The matches continued. By the 10th round, the humans were lasting longer. By the 15th, one human actually scored a point before losing. They were adapting faster than any species Valinara had ever seen. Then came the 20th match. Hyansik faced Korval again. This time, Hyansik lasted nearly 3 minutes, using techniques he had clearly learned from watching the previous matches. Korval finally won with a powerful strike that broke through Hyansik's guard. The impact was harder than intended. Valinara heard the crack of bone. Hyansik stumbled back, his left arm hanging at an unnatural angle. Broken. Medical team. Valinara called immediately. This was her fault. She should have enforced stricter safety protocols. But Hyansik waved off the approaching medics. He walked to the side of the mat, set his broken arm against a support beam, and with a grunt of pain, pushed it back into alignment. Then he tore strips from his training uniform and fashioned a crude splint. "What are you doing?" Valinara demanded. "You need medical attention." "I'll get it after," Hyansik said. He returned to the mat, raised his one good arm, and bowed to Korval. "Again. You cannot fight with a broken arm," Korval protested. "I've got another one," Hyansik said. The match resumed. Hyansik fought one-handed, adapting his entire style on the spot. He lost, of course, but not before landing a solid kick that actually made Korval step back. The human only yielded when Valinara personally stopped the match. As medics finally took Hyansik away, Valinara stood in shocked silence. In Kelthian culture, yielding when injured was honorable. It showed wisdom and self-preservation. This human concept of continuing despite injury seemed like madness. That evening, Valinara visited Hyansik in the medical bay. His arm was in a proper cast now, and he was sitting up, eating something from a tray. "Why didn't you yield?" she asked without preamble. Hyansik thought about it. "I wanted to see if I could score a point with one arm. I was close, too. You could have made the injury worse." "Maybe, but I learned something valuable. Pain is just information. It tells you something is wrong, but it doesn't have to stop you." Valinara sat down in the visitor's chair. "On my world, we respect fear and pain. They keep warriors alive. Your people seem to ignore them." "We don't ignore them," Hyansik corrected. "We feel pain just fine. Trust me, my arm hurts like hell. But humans learned a long time ago that if we stopped every time something hurt or scared us, we'd never accomplish anything. Ji Woo entered the medical bay, carrying flowers in a vase. Oh, good, you're both here. Valinara, I've been wanting to talk to you about human evolution. She set the flowers down and pulled up a holographic display from her data tablet. An image of Earth appeared, rotating slowly. This is our home world. We call it Earth. By galactic standards, it's what you'd classify as a Class 7 death world. Extreme temperature variations, unstable weather patterns, natural disasters, and thousands of species that evolved specifically to hunt and kill. The display showed images of Earth's predators: lions, tigers, bears, sharks, crocodiles, venomous snakes, and spiders. Humans didn't have claws or fangs or venom, Ji Woo continued. We had endurance. Our ancestors would chase prey for hours, sometimes days, until the animal collapsed from exhaustion. We call it persistence hunting. We just never gave up. That seems inefficient, Valinara said. It was, but it worked. And it shaped how we think. Give up means die. Keep going means maybe live. So we kept going. Ji Woo smiled. We survived ice ages, plagues, predators, and eventually we survived each other. Wars, disasters, all of it. Humans are really, really good at not quitting. Valinara looked at the image of Earth, then at Hyansik with his broken arm, then at Ji Woo with her cheerful smile. A cold feeling settled in her chest. I think I'm beginning to understand, she said slowly, why the Galactic Council is nervous about humanity joining. You don't fear like we do. Oh, we fear plenty, Hyansik said. We just don't let it win. That night, Valinara wrote in her report to the Kelthian Empire, the humans are not fearless. They may be the most fear-capable species I have encountered, but they possess something I cannot adequately describe. They acknowledge fear, then act as if it does not exist. This should not be possible. I am not certain this is a good thing. The assignment to Tethys 9 came 6 weeks after the combat demonstrations. The Galactic Council needed a joint inspection team to evaluate the mining colony's safety protocols. Valinara was assigned to lead the Kelthian contingent. When she saw Taeil's name on the human roster, she was both pleased and concerned. What Taeil didn't know was that this inspection was actually a test. The Galactic Council was evaluating humanity's readiness for full membership. Valinara had been quietly briefed. Observe how humans handle stress, danger, and the unknown. Report everything.TETHYS-9 was a moon orbiting a gas giant in a system with an unstable star. The mining colony extracted rare minerals from deep beneath the surface. 200 beings of various species lived and worked there, including 12 humans. The shuttle ride down was uneventful. Taeil spent most of it looking out the window at the moon's barren landscape. Valinara noticed he seemed relaxed, even though they were descending toward one of the more dangerous work sites in this sector. They were met at the landing pad by Yunji, the human mining supervisor. She was shorter than Taeil, with strong arms and a face weathered by years of hard work. Welcome to Tethys 9, Yunji said. It's not pretty, but we pull out some of the best gra. Dye minerals in the sector. Come on, I'll show you around. The colony was functional, but sparse. Everything was built for efficiency rather than comfort. The workers seemed competent and well organized. Valinara made notes on her datapad. So far, everything appeared standard. They were 3 hours into the inspection when the alarm started. This time, the sound was different. Not the sharp emergency klaxon of a containment breach, but a deeper, more ominous warning tone. The lights shifted to amber. What is that? Valinara demanded. Yunji's face had gone pale. She pulled up a display on her wrist terminal. Solar flare. A big one. Heading right for us. The colony's communication officer, a Thorian named Ren, rushed into the room. The flare is Class X9. Impact in 45 minutes. The main shielding grid is offline for maintenance. We need to evacuate. Where's the nearest safe location? Velinara asked, already calculating evacuation routes. There isn't one, Yunji said flatly. Our shuttle can hold 20 people maximum. We have 200 here. And even if we could get everyone off, the radiation would fry the shuttle systems before we got to orbit. Tae-il was already at a terminal, pulling up technical specifications. What about the emergency shelter? Rated for Class X5 maximum, Dren said. This is X9. We'd have 6 hours before lethal exposure. Velinara felt ice in her veins. This was it. This was the test, though she had not known it would come like this. There was no safe option. The logical choice was to save who they could and accept the losses. It was brutal mathematics, but it was survival. She looked at the humans in the room. Yunji, Tae-il, and a pilot named So-Ra, who had brought them down from Meridian 7. None of them were panicking. That was strange. They should be panicking. There might be a way, Tae-il said slowly. The old mining outpost, 12 kilometers north. It was abandoned 5 years ago, but it had its own shielding generator. That generator is non-functional, Dren said. That's why the outpost was abandoned. Non-functional or just offline? Tae-il asked. Yunji pulled up the old records. According to this ... offline, the power coupling failed. But even if we could fix it, we'd need replacement parts that we don't have here. The abandoned outpost has spare parts, So-Ra said. She was checking her own terminal. The inventory lists power couplings in storage. Then we need to retrieve them, Tae-il said. Velinara looked at the numbers. The solar flare arrives in 43 minutes. It would take 20 minutes to reach the outpost in a surface vehicle. Another 20 to return. You would be caught in the radiation storm. Probably, Tae-il agreed. What's the survival probability? Dren calculated quickly. 13%. And that's if everything goes perfectly. Tae-il looked at Yunji. Can you install the parts if we get them back here? Yes. It would take about 90 minutes to get the colony shield operational. Then that's the play, Tae-il said. He looked at So-Ra. You in? The pilot grinned. Someone's got to keep you from getting lost. Velinara grabbed Tae-il's arm. This is suicide. 13% is not acceptable odds. It's better than 0%, which is what everyone here has if we do nothing, Tae-il said. Look, I understand if you want to organize the evacuation of who we can save. That's the logical choice. But I'm not wired for logical when people need help. I forbid this, Velinara said, though she had no actual authority to stop him. Tae gave her a sad smile. I know you're trying to protect me, but this is what humans do. We take the 13% chance because the alternative is watching people die when we might have saved them. He and So-Ra left before Velinara could respond. She watched them through the window as they climbed into a reinforced surface vehicle. The vehicle's wheels kicked up dust as it accelerated north across the barren. Landscape.Yunji immediately began organizing the colony. Everyone to the emergency shelter. Engineers, I need you ready to install shielding components the moment they arrive. Move. There was no panic. The workers, human and alien alike, moved with purpose. Velinara found herself helping, despite her growing sense of doom. This was wrong. This was all wrong. Tae-il and So-Ra were going to die. And for what? A chance? Hope was not a strategy. She monitored their progress on the tracking system. The vehicle was moving fast, too fast for the rough terrain. But they were making good time. 20-2 minutes after they left, Sora's voice came over the radio. "We've reached the outpost. Going in now." Velinara checked the countdown. 21 minutes until the solar flare hit. She opened a communication channel. "You need to abort. Come back now." "Not yet." Tael's voice crackled with static. "We're in the storage area. I see the parts." Velinara listened to them work. Their voices were calm. They were talking about something called kimchi and whether it was better homemade or store-bought. They were discussing food while walking toward death. "Got them," Sora announced, heading back to the vehicle. Then there was silence. "Tael?" "Sora, report." More silence. Velinara's hearts were pounding. She checked the tracking system. The vehicle hadn't moved. Finally, Sora's voice came back. "We have a problem. The vehicle's power cell is damaged. We must have hit something on the way here. It won't start." The shelter had gone quiet. Everyone was listening. "Can you fix it?" Yunji asked. "Not in time," Sora said. "The radiation hits in 17 minutes. Velinara closed her eyes. This was it. She had watched these humans walk to their deaths, and for nothing. "We're going to have to walk back," Tael said. "Walk." Velinara couldn't believe what she was hearing. "It's 12 kilometers. You cannot walk 12 kilometers in 17 minutes. "No," Tael admitted. "But we can get closer. Every meter we cover is one less meter for a rescue team to travel after the radiation passes." "You will die," Velinara said. "Probably. But we've got the parts." "Sora, how far do you think we can get?" "In 17 minutes? Maybe 4 kilometers. If we run, then we run." Velinara listened in horror as the two humans began their impossible journey. They were running across a hostile moon's surface, carrying heavy equipment, racing against radiation that would kill them. And they were still talking. About Earth, about their families, about a movie Sora had seen recently. "Why are you not afraid?" Velinara demanded over the radio. There was a pause. Then Tael answered, breathing hard. "Who says we're not afraid? I'm terrified. My hands are shaking. My heart is beating so fast, I think it might explode." "Then why?" "Because fear is just information," Tael said. "It tells me this is dangerous, but it doesn't tell me what to do about it. That's my choice. And I choose to run." The solar flare hit 14 minutes later. Tael and Sora had made it 6 kilometers from the outpost. The radiation detectors went critical. Velinara could see their life signs on the monitor, weakening rapidly. A rescue team went out the moment it was safe, wearing full radiation suits. They found Tael and Sora collapsed on the ground, the parts still clutched in their hands. Both were alive, barely. Medical teams rushed them to the emergency bay. Yunji and her engineers installed the shielding components. 90 minutes after the flare hit, the colony's shields came online, protecting everyone from the residual radiation. Velinara sat beside Tael's medical bed. He was unconscious, his body fighting the radiation poisoning. The doctor said he would survive, but it had been close. Sora was in similar condition in the next room. As she watched his chest rise and fall, Velinara finally understood. Humans did feel fear. They felt it deeply, perhaps more deeply than any species she knew. But they had learned something her people hadn't. They had learned that feeling fear and being controlled by fear were two different things. She began typing her report to the Galactic Council. Her recommendation would be clear. Humanity deserved full membership, not because they were fearless, but because they understood what courage truly meant. As had passed since Tethys 9, Tael had recovered fully, though the doctors said he had been lucky. Sora was back to flying supply runs, joking that she had a great story for parties now. Life on Meridian 7 had returned to its normal rhythm. Valinara had submitted her report. The Galactic Council was reviewing humanity's application for full membership. She expected the decision to take months, maybe years. The Council moved slowly, as ancient institutions always did. She was in her quarters, reviewing patrol schedules when the alarm sounded again. This time, it was not a containment breach or a solar flare. This was the sound she had hoped never to hear. The war alarm. Valinara ran to the command center. The main display showed multiple ships approaching at high speed. She recognized the design immediately. Vrexian, a military strike force. The Vrexian Collective was an aggressive empire that had been testing the borders of civilized space for years. They respected only strength and saw diplomacy as weakness. And now they were here, bearing down on Meridian-7. The station commander, an elderly Thorian named Kesvar, was already issuing orders. All diplomatic personnel to evacuation shuttles immediately. Military escort will hold them off as long as possible. Valinara checked her tactical display. 30 Vrexian warships against Meridian 7's minimal defenses. This was not a raid. This was a capture operation. The station descended into controlled chaos. Aliens of every species rushed toward the evacuation bays. Valinara gathered her Kelthian warriors, preparing to cover the evacuation. It was their duty. She found Tail in the human diplomatic section. But he wasn't packing. He and the other humans were suiting up in emergency environmental gear and gathering equipment. "What are you doing?" Valinara demanded. "The evacuation order has been given." Ambassador Young-Ho, the senior human diplomat on station, looked up from checking a weapon. He was a man in his 60s, with gray hair and calm eyes. "We're staying," Young-Ho said simply. "That's suicide. There are 30 warships out there." "I can count," Young-Ho said. "But if we can buy even an extra hour for the evacuation, that's hundreds of lives saved." Valinara looked around the room. Ji Woo was there, along with Hyansik, still wearing a support brace from his arm injury. Sora was checking ammunition counts. Tae-il was helping a young human engineer named Nari set up what looked like mining equipment. "How many humans are on this station?" Valinara asked. 48, Young-Ho said. 48 of us, and we're all staying. To die? To fight, Young-Ho corrected. The council chamber has the critical data cores. If the Vrexians get them, they'll have access to classified information from a dozen species. We can't let that happen. Valinara felt something twist in her chest. She looked at her warriors, then at the humans, then at the evacuation routes. She was making a decision that would likely end her career, possibly her life. "Corval," she said to her second-in-command. "Take our people to the shuttles, Commander." "That's an order." "I'm staying here." Corval's eyes widened. "The Empire will not approve. Then they can court-martial me later." "If there is a later, go." Her warriors hesitated, then obeyed. They were disciplined enough to follow orders, even ones they disagreed with. Valinara turned to Young-Ho. "You now have 49 defenders." The old man smiled. "Welcome aboard. Hope you're ready for some creative problem-solving." The Vrexians gave them exactly 12 minutes. Enough time for most of the station to evacuate, but not enough to save everything. The first boarding pods attached to the station's hull like metal leeches, cutting through with plasma torches. Young-Ho had divided the defenders into teams. Each team had a mix of humans, and Valinara he had insisted she could choose which group to join. She chose Tail's team. They took position in the corridor leading to the council chambers. Tae-il had set up strange barricades made of mining equipment, cargo containers, and what looked like furniture. "What is this?" Valinara asked. Improvisation, Tail said. We don't have military-grade defenses, so we use what we have. That cargo container is filled with pressurized foam. When they breach it, it'll expand and fill the corridor. They'll have to cut through it, which buys us time. The first Vrexian soldiers came through hard and fast. They were massive creatures, nearly 8 feet tall, with armored exoskeletons and powerful weapons. They moved in perfect formation, a product of centuries of military tradition. They ran right into Tae-Eel's trap. The pressurized foam exploded outward, filling the corridor with a rapidly hardening substance. The Vrexians struggled, caught in the expanding mass. Hyung-Sik, fighting one-handed, picked off the soldiers that broke free. Ji Woo, the cheerful biologist, threw containers of chemicals that reacted with the Vrexian armor, creating noxious smoke. It was chaos. It was brutal. And it was working. The battle raged for hours. The humans used tactics that made Valinara's military training recoil in horror. They collapsed corridors on themselves to create choke points. They vented sections into space with themselves still inside, using magnetic boots and emergency suits to survive. They set traps that required manual triggers, meaning someone had to stay behind to activate them. Valinara fought beside Tae-Eel as he rewired a power junction to overload. This will electrify the entire deck, he explained, working quickly. We need to get to the insulated section. How long do we have? 30 seconds after I activate it. Plenty of time. He was shot before he could reach the insulated section. A Vrexian soldier had flanked them, and the plasma bolt caught Tae-Eel in the side. He went down hard. Valinara killed the soldier and ran to Tae-Eel. He was bleeding badly. She tried to lift him, but he pushed her away. The trap, he gasped. Activate it. They're coming. You'll die. Maybe, but so will they? That's a trade I'll take. Valinara saw the Vrexian soldiers rushing down the corridor. She saw the activation switch. She saw Tae-Eel bleeding on the floor. And she understood, finally, what it meant to be human. She grabbed Tae-Eel and threw him over her shoulder. Her Kelthian strength was enough to carry him. She ran for the insulated section as Tae-Eel reached back and activated the trap. Electricity arced through the corridor behind them. They made it through the door with seconds to spare. That was stupid, Tae-Eel coughed. Yes, Elenara agreed. I'm learning from you humans. The battle continued. Somewhere in the station, Ji Woo was using her knowledge of Vrexian biology to exploit every weakness. Hyung-Sik was fighting with a broken arm and a rifle, refusing to yield. So-Ra had crashed a shuttle into a Vrexian boarding pod, then walked away from the wreckage shooting. Ambassador Young-Ho held the council chamber itself, sending out periodic updates to the incoming Galactic Council forces. His messages were calm and professional, even as explosions rocked the station around him. 18 hours after the attack began, reinforcements arrived. Council warships, alerted by the evacuation ships, dropped out of faster-than-light travel and engaged the Vrexian fleet. The enemy ships, having suffered unexpected losses to the station's defenders, retreated. Valinara stood in the ruined corridor, surrounded by debris and bodies, both human and Vrexian. The humans had lost 14 people. 34 remained, most wounded. But they had held. Against impossible odds, they had held. The Vrexian commander, a warrior named Thelor, was captured when his boarding pod was isolated and vented. He was brought before Young-Ho, who was leaning on a makeshift crutch, his leg bandaged. Thelor looked at the old human with something Valinara had never seen in a Vrexian's eyes before: fear. "What are you?" The Vrexian whispered. Young-Ho smiled tiredly. "We're the species that survived Earth, Commander. Everything else was easy." The Galactic Council arrived hours later to assess the damage. They found a small group of humans and one Kelthian warrior, battered and exhausted, having defended a station that should have fallen in minutes. Valinara watched as medics treated Taeil's wounds. He would survive, the doctor said. Humans were remarkably resilient. Why did you stay? Taeil asked her quietly. Valinara considered the question. Because I needed to see, to understand, to learn what you do with fear. And now I know. You feel it, acknowledge it, and then do what needs to be done anyway. Taeil smiled. That's all courage is. Fear plus action. Valinara looked out at the stars, where the council fleet was securing the area. She thought about her report, about humanity's application for membership. After today, she doubted there would be any question of approval. The galaxy had just learned what humans were capable of. And Valinara had learned something more important. She wanted to fight beside them again. The Galactic Council chambers were ancient. The building had stood for over 10,000 years, hosting debates and decisions that shaped civilizations. Today, it would make one of its most important decisions in recent history. Valinara stood in the witness area, wearing her formal Kelthian armor. The chamber was filled with representatives from 200 species, each one a member of the galactic community. They had gathered to vote on humanity's application for full membership. The mood was tense. The battle at Meridian 7 had happened 6 months ago, and the recordings of that fight had spread across the galaxy. Some species were impressed. Others were terrified. 48 humans had held off 300 Vrexian warriors long enough for a rescue that should never have come in time. Counselor Mersef, the ancient leader of the council, called the session to order. She was a whisper folk, a species of ethereal beings that communicated through harmonics. Her translated voice filled the chamber. We are here to determine if humanity is ready to join us as full members. Special Investigator Valinara of the Kelthian Empire has spent considerable time among humans. She will present her findings. Valinara stepped forward. She had prepared this speech carefully, but now, looking at the assembled representatives, she decided to speak from her heart instead. 6 months ago, I was asked to evaluate humanity, to determine if they were ready to join our community. I have spent that time observing them, fighting beside them, and trying to understand them. She paused. I failed. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. I failed because I was asking the wrong questions. I asked, are humans brave? Are they capable? Are they civilized? But those were not the important questions. The important question is, what are humans? Valinara activated a display. Images appeared, showing Earth. The planet rotated slowly, blue and green and beautiful. This is Earth. By our classification system, it is a Class 7 death world. Extreme temperature variations, unstable weather, frequent natural disasters. It is home to thousands of predator species, each evolved to kill efficiently. Humans evolved on this world without claws, without venom, without armored skin. They should have gone extinct. More images appeared. Ancient humans hunting, building fires, creating tools. They survived through persistence. They were not the fastest or the strongest, but they never stopped. They chased prey for days until it collapsed. They survived ice ages that should have killed them. They endured plagues, predators, and eventually each other. Their entire evolutionary history is a story of surviving the impossible. Valinara looked at the council members. This shaped them in ways we cannot fully understand. They developed a unique relationship with fear. Every species here evolved fear as a survival mechanism. It keeps us alive by making us cautious. But humans learned to feel fear and act anyway. A Thorian counselor raised a hand. Is this not dangerous? A species that ignores survival instincts? They do not ignore fear, Velinara corrected. They weaponize it. They feel fear more acutely than most species I've studied. But they've developed what they call courage. The ability to acknowledge fear and choose action despite it. She showed footage from the Meridian 7 battle. The Council watched in silence as humans fought with improvised weapons, used tactics that risked their own lives, and never yielded even when defeat seemed certain. Some of you may think this makes them reckless, dangerous. Perhaps you are right to be concerned. But consider this. Every species in this chamber shares a common evolutionary path. We learned to flee from overwhelming threats. It kept our ancestors alive. It is why we survived. Velinara paused for effect. But what happens when fleeing is no longer an option? The chamber went very quiet. I must share something with you, Velinara continued. Something the Council has kept classified for 200 years. Counselor Mersith's harmonics took on a sharp tone. Investigator, you are venturing into restricted information. The people deserve to know, Velinara said firmly. Especially now. She looked at the assembled representatives. There is an ancient threat returning. Something our ancestors called the Devourers. They consumed civilizations before our recorded history began. And they are coming back. The chamber erupted into chaos. Representatives shouted in dozens of languages. Counselor Merseth called for order, her harmonics rising to a painful pitch dot. When silence finally returned, Merseth spoke. How do you know this classified information? Because a human discovered it, Velinara said. A scientist named Jin Wu was analyzing ancient stellar patterns. He found evidence of massive energy signatures moving through dark space. When he brought this to my attention, I accessed the Council's hidden archives. I found the truth. She displayed data on the screens. Ancient records, warning of an enemy that could not be reasoned with or escaped from. Our ancestors fled from the Devourers, Velinara said. Every species in this council has survivor's flight encoded in our evolutionary memory. We learn to run from unstoppable threats. It is in our nature. She looked at each counselor in turn. Humanity never learned this lesson. Earth had nowhere to run to. When faced with unstoppable threats, they learned to stand and fight, to adapt, to persist. It is in their nature, the same way fleeing is in ours. A Kelthian counselor stood. Are you suggesting we need humans because we are cowards? I am suggesting we need humans because they are different, Velinara said. When the Devourers return, our instinct will be to flee. Humanity's instinct will be to fight. And perhaps, by working together, we can do something our ancestors never did. We can survive not by running, but by standing our ground. The debate raged for hours. Some counselors argued that humanity was too dangerous, too unpredictable. Others pointed out that the galaxy needed unpredictable right now. The old strategies had failed against the Devourers once before. Finally, Counselor Mersith called for the vote. The result was not unanimous, but it was clear. Humanity was granted full membership in the Galactic Council. Velinara found Teil outside the council chambers. He was there with Ambassador Young-Ho and other human representatives. They had been waiting nervously for the decision. You're in, Velinara told them. Young-Ho let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for months. The other humans cheered, hugging each other. Teil smiled at Velinara. Thank you for everything you said in there. I only told the truth, Velinara said. Then, more quietly, but there is something you should know. The Devourers are real. They are coming. This membership is not just an honor. It is a burden. Teil's smile faded, replaced by something more serious. When? We don't know exactly. Jinwu's data suggests within 10 years. Maybe less. Then we have work to do, Teil said. He looked at the stars visible through the chamber's windows. My grandfather used to tell me a saying, "The best time to prepare for disaster is before it happens." Ambassador Young-ho nodded. We'll need to coordinate defenses, share technology, train together. This won't be easy. Nothing worth doing is easy, Velinara said, surprising herself with how human she sounded. Over the following weeks, Velinara made a decision that shocked her empire. She requested a transfer to Earth to train with human military forces. If the Kelthians were going to learn to face the Devourers, they needed to learn from the species that never learned to run. Her request was granted, though her superiors made it clear they thought she had spent too much time among humans and had been affected by their recklessness. She found Tae-il at Meridian 7 one last time before her departure. He had been appointed as the station's new director, overseeing its reconstruction. I have a question, Velinara said. On Tethys 9, when you went into that tunnel, when you were alone in the dark with alarm screaming, what were you thinking? Tae-il looked out at the stars, considering. I was terrified, more scared than I've ever been. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my tools. Then why did you continue? Because people were counting on me. And because I remembered something my grandfather told me. He was a firefighter back on Earth, ran into burning buildings to save people. I asked him once how he did it, how he walked toward fire when everything in him wanted to run away. What did he say? He said being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you're scared, but someone needs help, so you go anyway. Fear is just information. It tells you something is dangerous. But what you do with that information, that's what defines you. Velinara understood completely now. You humans don't show no fear. You show us what to do with fear. Exactly, Tae-il said. Fear is a tool, not a master. Every species feels it. But you can choose what it makes you do. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching ships come and go from the station. The galaxy was changing. Humanity had joined the community not just as members, but as teachers of something the other species had forgotten. Velinara thought about the Devourers, about the coming threat. For the first time since learning about them, she didn't feel the instinctive terror. She felt something else, determination, hope. When they come, she said quietly, they will expect us to run like our ancestors did. And Tae-il asked, and they will be disappointed, because we've learned from you. We've learned that fear is just the beginning, not the end. Tae-il smiled. That's all courage is. Fear plus action equals hope. As Velinara prepared to leave for Earth, a message was being transmitted across the galaxy. It was composed by Ambassador Young-ho and approved by the Galactic Council. Every species received it, from the most powerful empires to the smallest colonies. To all civilized species, a threat approaches that our ancestors fled from. We ran to survive, and that was wisdom. But running forever is not survival. It is just a slower death. Humanity has joined us, and they bring something we lost, the will to stand and fight. They will teach us to remember what our ancestors forgot. When the Devourers arrive, they will not find prey. They will find something they have never encountered. A galaxy that fights back. Not because we don't feel fear, but because we've learned what humans have always known. Fear is not a stop sign. It is a starting line. The message ended with a simple statement that would become the motto of the United Galactic Defense Forces.